We're back with breaking news. A serial killer suspect behind bars tonight linked to a string of unsolved murders of women from more than a decade ago. 59-year-old Rex Heerman, a married father of two, and a New York City architect. A neighbor said he just looked like an average Joe. Suffolk County District Attorney Raymond Tierney joins me. Good evening, sir, and of course, and congratulations is in order for you and the entire task force on this arrest. But tell me, what was it like notifying the victims' families?
Good evening. You know, I gained, I got into this office in January of 2022. So I met with the victims, actually some of the victims, before I even took office. And, you know, we promised we were going to do whatever we could. And the victims' families were so patient and just, you know, diligent in maintaining the memory of their loved ones, that when we were finally able to tell them that we made progress, it was a very emotional conversation for both sides.
Did the suspect resist getting arrested at all?
No.
And I assume since this began, I mean, you took office in January 2022, March 2022, you had a hit in a database, and I'm making assumptions that it's a DNA of some sort or something like that. And then I assume you've been following him and watching him since March of 2022 pretty carefully?
Well, so what had happened was we had some evidence. It was a database with regard to a certain car that one of the murder victims was seen, you know, was associated with one of the murders, and so we used that. We used a cell site location. We had narrowed down two areas of interest with regard to cell phone activity. One of the areas of interest was location where the defendant lived. One was where he worked. So we did that as well. And then once we developed that suspect, we were able to then begin following him. We obtained abandonment samples for DNA, and then we were able to get our DNA and make the match.
So, I mean, so you can see, I mean, like just the idea of that, so it starts with a tip on the car from someone who saw something. Imagine if that person hadn't made or they hadn't reported the car. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary because the bodies were found so long after the deaths and murders. I mean, that actually seems quite remarkable that you got that tip.
Yeah, I think, well, what had happened was, I mean, it was in existence. We just sort of furthered it. And the other thing that helped us was once we got that tip, once the physical description of the defendant matched the individual in the car, in this case, the Chevy Avalanche, the phone work, and then the defendant was using burner phones. So we were able to sort of utilize our investigation to realize that it was him who, to prove that he was using these burner phones. And then while all of that's happening, DNA technology is improving to the point where now we could do mitochondrial DNA, because originally the hairs that were left at the scene were too degraded for traditional DNA analysis.
All right, so he seems to be connected to, at least for to four murders, that cluster of murders. There was one a little bit earlier that has not yet been at least part of this indictment, and then there are there are several others that are also. Are you concluding that he's not involved in those other murders that are not named in the indictment, or is the investigation ongoing about those?
So if you look at the screen there, the four women, that's Amber Costello, Melissa. As well as Maureen Brainerd Barnes and Megan Waterman. Those four individuals, you can see they're clustered together, and the circumstances of the death, the way they were left, their patterns of life, very similar. And so the evidence is very similar. So it's our investigation was able to prove or show at least enough for an indictment that this defendant we can allege that he committed these. There's a lot of other bodies that were found there, and so there's a lot more work to be done.
His wife and child, was he living with them at least up until last night?
Yes, he has a wife and two children, one biological daughter and one stepson.
Well, again, congratulations to the task force. It's all, I mean, this in solving a cold case and calling a family and bringing them justice. There's, you know, it's a lot to be said for that. That's why we do our jobs. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.